it's Katie again. I asked my mom to talk a bit more about D.A.D.S, a daughter's awareness for dissociative seizures, so here's my mom.
Hi, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about our story, like kind of what our family went through, what my husband had to go through. So we're a normal family. I was a stay-at-home mom taking care of our 2 children. My husband had been a firefighter for almost 17 years. He would work 48-hour shifts, and then on his days off he would pick up shifts in the ER at a hospital where he was a paramedic. So he had 2 kind of stressful jobs. Sorry, I have my notes here because my mind's not always there right now after the big everything lately. So to keep our story shorter, I'm just gonna, first I'll tell you he was seeing a pulmonologist for some lung issues that he had been having for a few years, and they thought that a lot of the lung problems, while they didn't have a lot of answers, that they thought it was due to his job as a firefighter. I'm gonna start with when I had to take my husband into the hospital. He was, it was Mother's Day of 2014, and he started having what appeared to be a stroke. He was a mini stroke and seizures. And it was getting really bad, and that's when I knew that it was something I needed to have the doctors see so that they could figure out what was going on with him. So by the time I drove him up to the emergency room, he could barely walk. He was dragging in. His whole face was droopy, his arm, he couldn't use, his leg he had to drag with him. Once we got him admitted, and he started having more seizures. While he was in the hospital, he had so many seizures that the doctors finally stopped counting. They had him on anti-seizure medication, and when a new seizure would start, they would try giving him a shot to stop the seizure, but after a few of those, his body stopped responding to that shot, and the seizures broke through and it no longer stopped them. He just continued having them. The next morning when I had gone in to see him, I had to go home because of our children. And once I dropped them off at school, I went in the next morning, and it was a very scary sight, one that I will probably never get out of my mind. Seeing him, they had him sat up in a chair, and they were giving him, or his breakfast was in front of him, but he couldn't raise his arms to eat. He was very slouched over. His whole face and body reminded me of people I had taken care of when I had worked in a nursing home when I was younger. He couldn't speak, he couldn't do anything. I tried to cut him some food, but he couldn't even chew it, so I just got him back in bed. At that point, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if they were going to be able to help him, if he was ever going to regain full function again. We didn't have any answers yet. And the doctors really didn't know what was going on. They were having problems with the EEG machines, and they needed that to really see what was going on with the seizures. They were rushing him in for MRIs and CAT scans and all kinds of tests and blood work. But everything was coming back normal and showing that there was nothing wrong. There were no clots. There was nothing to give us any answers. EEG machines are a lot harder to come by. Not a lot of the hospitals have them. We had gone to one that had a neurologist because I knew they had a neurologist on staff. But their EEG machine was down. The workers were great. They were going to find parts to try and get it put together so they could run this test to see if he was having epileptic seizures or what was going on. While we were waiting, I was told they were getting him a bed down at a bigger hospital that they wanted to transfer him to, but they had to wait because none of the beds were available. After they had finally got the EEG on him done, they were waiting for test results, and we went till the next morning. The next morning when the doctor came in, I had come back up to the hospital, so he came in early in the morning and woke us. I was laying down with my husband, and he let us know that the tests weren't showing anything still, and there was nothing they could really do. My husband was getting very agitated and having a really rough time and not fully in his right mind. It was really confusing, and they thought he would do better going home where he could be more comfortable and not running up a huge hospital bill. So they just sent him home on the same medications until something could change, since they couldn't get him another bed and there was nothing else they could do. So they sent him home on 2,000 milligrams of Depakote. Very high dose. When I went to fill the prescription, the pharmacist about died, but that's what they had him on to even try and somewhat help with the seizures he was having. The next little while was very difficult. He was had a lot of paralysis issues that lasted. Some of the symptoms weren't going away. He had a hard time even walking. I had to get him special crutches to walk with for a while, and I couldn't leave him alone because he would not know where he was, not be able to do anything. He'd fall because he'd think he could get up and do things. He couldn't remember anything, and to this day he doesn't remember anything after we got to the hospital for a few week period. And it was really frustrating on him and on all of us, because the doctors had told us everything was fine. They said he wasn't having seizures or strokes, even though while they were in the room, they would call them seizures and strokes because they looked exactly like that, but on the test they didn't show it, so they couldn't technically diagnose it as that. So we already had an appointment to follow up with the neurologist that we happened to see in the hospital that had been treating him. By the time that came, he was able to move a little bit better. There wasn't as much of the paralysis. It would just come and go. He was still having seizures countless times a day, losing his right side on and off. And we went in and they decided to try and run a whole lot more tests, and the doctor talked with some of his partners, and we're going to discuss the case, and they wanted blood work, more EEGs. They scheduled a 3-day EEG along with MRIs and more CTs, and we were just going to go from there. So they were able to do a 3-day EEG in our home, and he did have some different type of events during that time, but everything, when we met with him again, they said that it was kind of inconclusive and nothing showed that it was epileptic seizures. And so he couldn't really help us. He said it was out of his hands, kind of above him, not in his field, and they referred us to a psychologist. Let's see. After this kind of made my husband feel like, well, what's going on? Because they referred terms that are now documented as outdated as pseudo-seizures, which they've now said is very incorrect to call them, because it makes the patients feel like people don't believe them, or they may be faking these problems, but they're very real. And the patients have no control over it, and they're definitely not faking them, and they're a very traumatic thing to go through. So my husband he's like, what, am I just crazy? What's going on? I'm broken. And he had a really hard time with that. And it took a long time to get in, as all specialists do. It took a long time to get into the psychologist. When we were finally able to meet with him, he basically had never heard of peonies. That's what the psychologist had said they were. He didn't explain peonies. We didn't really know anything. We just kind of waited to see what the next doctor said, just because they were non-epileptic. That's all we knew. The psychologist hadn't really heard of him. He was like, well, I guess we'll just keep you on the medicine that the neurologist had you on, because every time my husband went off the medicine, he got a lot worse. So much that there were times he couldn't even understand me. When I was trying to help him, he would come out and he could hear me making noise, but he couldn't process the sounds into actual words, and he couldn't communicate back with me. So I would write things down, and all he could try and mouth or write back to me, I'd get out a notepad, and he kept thinking it was a dream. He didn't think anything was real, and he didn't want to face that it was real because it was so scary and such a hard thing for him. So the neurologist just kept us on the medicine, and kind of the psychologist, and kind of left it at that. He didn't talk to us. We met with the counselor a few times, and really left the counselor's office making the counselor laugh, because we were happy, we were fine, we weren't, we were normal, excited people, and they didn't really seem to specialize in PTSD or other things that was the treatment that my husband needed. So finally, we decided we really needed to do something, and I started really looking into this and doing research. My daughter wanted to create this D.A.D.S, a daughter's awareness for dissociative seizures page, and find ways to help out and find more about it, as it could be her platform, since she does a lot of pageants where she's running for Miss Preteen Utah. We want to help raise awareness, since a lot of doctors in people's areas may not have studied this as much, and people are left like we were, without answers, being frustrated, having it drug out for a long time, and adding a lot more stress to the situation. We want to spread the word about it, have you guys all spread the word of it, so that people that hear about this or may be suffering from this know what's going on and can get some answers that we couldn't get, and maybe help them sooner and not go through the frustrations we've gone through. We want to also be able to spread awareness to help the firefighters, police officers, soldiers, other people that maybe deal with traumatic events that can cause PTSD, that can lead to this, maybe be able to prevent that from happening by talking about the things they see and the traumas they go on and deal with, so that it doesn't become this problem, so they can get help sooner and not have it lead into this that they're not aware of even happens. Also, for people that are the caregivers, we've recommended another page that I found that was recommended to me for the caregivers. I have a link to it on another place on this page, but it's really important for those who are left with the burden trying to run everything, take care of everyone, keep on top of everything. It gets very draining and very hard, and these caregivers need someone to talk to sometimes. I was a very active, happy, energetic person, fun mom, and I began suffering from depression, and I went to a very tired, didn't want to get out, didn't want to do anything, had a hard time making the fun things fun for my children that I used to do. So I also want the caregivers to be aware that there are other people out there that they can talk to by going to some of these groups, and try and find more understandings, try and see support for what people are going to if you don't have a lot of family or other things around to help you out. So please check out our page and spread the word. And this is the ribbon that is now for peonies, it's actually recognized as it. The blue is for PTSD and the purple is for seizures. Thank you.